Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Greeting Star. Please excuse my voice, I've been battling some illness. Here's the card we're going to make today. It's a Christmas card with a recessed panel, and we'll be using this stamp from Stampendous. It's a background stamp. It has text on it, and the ink is a Ranger ink. It's a watercolor ink. I'm going to be stamping it onto some gift wrapping tissue paper here. And once this is completely stamped, I'm going to make sure it's completely dry by setting it with a heat gun. I do not want to have any of this ink wet. It needs to be dry because I'm going to be using a multi-matte medium, an adhesive, to adhere it to a card panel. And I want to make sure that that ink is dry so it doesn't smear and run and look ugly. So there's my golden matte medium, and checking to make sure that that ink again is completely dry. And then I decide to use a different color for the card panel. So I'm going to use a brush to adhere the matte medium to the card base before I attach the tissue paper to it. So here we go. Once that's nice and covered, that entire area, I'm going to flatten out this tissue paper onto the card base. I want to make sure that there aren't any wrinkles or anything, or bubbles. So I'm trying to go over it with some matte medium to flatten it out. And then once I'm done with that, I want to make sure that the very edges are adhered well to the card base. So I'm going to fold that over and turn it over and use my brush to apply some more to make sure that it sticks down well. Just using my finger there to make sure that the edge of that paper goes over. I didn't want to tear it because I didn't want to allow it to somehow become sometimes it tends to flip up or get, I can't think of the word now, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I just love to use this matte medium. I think it's so much fun. I don't know why, but of course I was always the kid who loved to play in the mud and feel it squish between my toes. So very tactile. I'm using my heat gun to dry this so that I can go ahead and get on with making the card. I want to stamp an image onto it, so I need to make sure that that matte medium is completely dry. I do not want to get any of it on my stamp because that would ruin the stamp once it dries on the stamp. So I'm using this heat tool on the front and the back to try to prevent it from curling up too much. And then I'm just trying to reform it here, make as flat as possible. And this stamp set here that I'm going to be bringing in is a stamp set from Oriental Trading Company. And I ordered it online, and when you go there now, you don't see as many stamps that they used to have. So I think they're kind of getting away from making these, but they had quite a few really adorable little stamp sets at a really economical price. So that's too bad. Anyway, I'm using my We Are Memory Keepers precision press stamping tool because I want to make sure that if the first image doesn't come out crisp and clear, I can restamp it in exactly the same location, so I don't have any double lines or anything. So this is again the archival ink by Ranger, which is waterproof and will stay on that matte medium surface very well. And I'm going to use some Faber-Castell Pit Artist pens, and these have a brush tip, so I'm going to color that image with these. And these markers are made with India ink, which is again a permanent ink, and it flows really well onto the matte medium. Some markers have a hard time going on top of that matte medium, but these markers work beautifully. So the colors I've chosen here, I've decided to go with a light and a dark for each shade, or each color, I should say, each hue if you want to be technical. Anyway, I am using the dark blue for the bottom of Mary's garment. And then to add some dimension, I'm going to be using this black in the, well, that's her hair right there. But in the hollow of her sleeves here, I just added a touch of that black. And then I went back with the blue to try to blend it. So that way you can see, looks more like sleeves. And then I'm just cleaning off that marker so that I don't have any more black on the tip of it. I don't want that to ruin my marker. Okay, then I went in with a lighter color for her veil, and then I took out a peach color for the skin. And now I'm taking out my darker blue to add some more dimension to that veil, because I thought the lighter blue was just too much of a difference, and I didn't want that contrast. So I added some more, a little bit of the darker blue and blended it with a lighter one. Now there's still a bit of differentiation, but not so much that it doesn't look like it doesn't go. And then I only used one color of yellow. I never used that lighter color. And I used that for the baby Jesus halo. And then for the staff, I'm using two colors of brown, a lighter and a darker. And in person, it looks really awesome. It looks like real wood for some reason. I didn't do anything special because it was really thin. I just used the two different colors, but it looks really nice. And then around the halo, I used the lighter green because I wanted to give it the effect that the halo was casting a little bit of a glow all the way around on Joseph's clothes. So I tried to do that. Again, cleaning off that marker, the light marker, so that the darker color doesn't damage it. And then I'm using some more peach and then some black for the hair. And then I go in with a Uniball Signo silver gel pen to do their headbands. So once this image is all colored, I'm going to go ahead and get ready to adhere it to my card base, which is Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstock. And I'm going to again use the Ranger multi-matte medium to adhere this card to the card panel. Excuse me. And since this card panel already has some matte medium on it, it's really thick, and I want to do a good job of adhering it to the card base. So what I'm going to do is use some matte medium to on the card base as well as on the back of the card panel. So that way we'll get a really good adhesion going there. So just going over it to make sure it's flat and there's no air caught underneath it. And then I'm going to set that aside and let it dry. And I'm going to work on the portion of the card that's going to go over that panel that we just completed. This is, I'm trying to create a night sky here. So I'm using Ranger Distress Ink and some sponge daubers to apply it to the panel. And what I'm doing is I'm not looking for a uniform color here. So I'm not trying to smooth it out or, make it look really even. I just want to try to make it look more like a night sky. So you're going to have those variations and differences in color throughout. So I'm just applying this around the edge of my card panel because I'm going to be cutting it so that on the diagonal, so I don't need that middle portion. And when this is done with the Salty Ocean, I'm going to use those other two colors, which is I believe the Concord Grape and the Stormy Sky. But all the products I use will be listed down below in the description. So when I'm finished here with this salty ocean, I go ahead and take the Concord grape and I go around the edge. What I want to do is make it look like the glow from, the Nativity is sort of radiating out to the night sky. So I didn't like the way I have this edge here that was a straight line between the two different colors. So I went back over it with some stormy sky to try to even it out, and then I went back around with a Concord grape and the salty ocean again, just to try to blend those colors and make them look a little more a better gradient instead of that stark line right in the middle. So here is my this is the stormy sky that I'm using to try to create that blend, the better blend. And I'm going back and forth between it and the salty ocean, again, just to make sure that that line isn't definitive, that it's more blended. Okay, now I'm going to use some water to react with this distress ink, and my goal here is to just kind of lighten it up in areas so that it looks like stars. And then to make it put a little more glitz and glamour, I'm using some pearlescent watercolor here. And I'm going to flick that onto the card so that it looks like stars. I think that this effect is really beautiful, and I really like the way it turned out. Excuse me. So once that's done, I'm going to make sure it's dry before I cut it. And I'm going to use a ruler to measure from the middle of the top of the card. So I'm finding the center point here. And then I'm going to use the ruler to draw a line from that center point to the bottom left corner and the bottom right corner. And then I'm going to take it over to my cutting board, and I'm going to cut that. And I'm going to use those two panels and I'm going to pop them up. But first I'm going to create a little star for the top of that. And this is meant to kind of look like the star is shining down on them and creating, a light in the night sky. And it's interesting though, because the shape of it also looks like a Christmas tree, so that's kind of interesting. So I'm using this Uniball Signo silver gel pen to color in this star. And I'm trying to make sure that I use the same strokes every time, just straight up and down. Instead of going up and down and side to side, I want it to look uniform. So then I am making sure that's dry before I cut it. I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to pop it up on my card base. And I should have used my smaller scissors. I think that would have been easier to cut this star out if I had done so. But those were handy. So there we go. And I'm going to adhere that star right there in the center. But first I wanted to color in the background there where the two blue panels are not showing. And I'm going to use a yellow to do that because I want it to look like that star is adding a glow. And I am using my finger to blend that because I don't want the yellow to be extremely saturated. I just wanted sort of a soft glow. So there we go with that. And I'm erasing those pencil lines that I had drawn in for a guide. And now I'm going to get some foam tape so that I can pop up those side panels. I think foam tape is so fun. So neat to pop things up on cards. I really like doing that. It's so much fun to go into the store and look at the greeting cards, because greeting cards have really incorporated a lot of things that handmade card makers do on their cards. So they've responded to the competition by trying to mimic what we do. I think we do it better. Okay, so there's my star. Now I need to put a greeting at the bottom, so I'm going to create a portion at the bottom to do that. But first I'm using my Uniball Signo silver gel pen to add some rays of light coming out from that star. And then I'm going to use this peel off sticker to create a border there on the edges of that portion of the panel that's popped up. I think this looks really pretty. I love that. Okay, and those are Dazzle stickers by paperwishes.com. Now here is a portion of scrap that I had left over from when I trimmed off the other part of the panel, and I needed to color in this white portion that was left. So I got my distress inks out again and went to it. So this is my salty ocean, my stormy sky, and my Concord grape. So making sure that that ink is dry, because I want to heat emboss on this. So in a moment here you'll see that I'm going to get out my Versamark and my anti-static pad. And this is a stamp set by Hero Arts. I think it's called Everyday Sayings. And I'm just going to trim this down so it'll fit on the front of my card. And here's my Versamark. And I'm using an acrylic block to stamp this sentiment, and using a baby wipe to clean it up. Now, since Merry and Christmas are right on top of each other and they're really close, I couldn't cut it apart. So I'm just using some white post-it tape here to cover up the word Christmas so that I could stamp the word Merry first. There's my anti-static pad. So I'm going to stamp the word Merry, then I'm going to clean it off and use the same piece of tape to cover the word Merry so I can stamp the word Christmas. So there we go. Now I'm going to use some Wow silver embossing powder and just take a paintbrush to remove any pieces of the embossing powder that stuck to places I didn't want it to. The anti-static tool was supposed to prevent that, but it doesn't always work in every instance. And this is a quick sticks by We Are Memory Keepers that I'm using to hold that panel down while I heat emboss my sentiment. And then I'm just going to adhere that to the bottom of the card. So here is the finished product. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching the card making video today. Please join me on my blog at greetingstar.org, or check out my ebook on making greeting cards at amazon.com/author/greetingstar.